Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session in American English Live Teacher Development Series 7. My name is Lauren, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Heather, who will be serving as moderator to help answer your questions and respond to your comments during the session. Today, our host, Kate, will be talking with our presenter, Ann Walker, who will share a range of easy-to-implement strategies with ideas for adapting vocabulary instruction techniques for diverse contexts, including multi-level classrooms. So let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of American English Live Teacher Development. We're so happy to have each of you here with us today. It's always such a pleasure to see your familiar names in our chat box and comments, and of course, welcome to all of our newcomers as well. Let's begin today with these fantastic photos featuring teachers from La Paz, Bolivia and Hazrat Shah viewing groups. We love to see our teacher participants actively engaged in professional development, so please share your photos by emailing them to americanenglishwebinars@fhi360.org or by sharing them on social media. If you share on social media, please tag us at American English for Educators so that we can be sure to see your photo. And we very much hope to share one of your photos during our next session. Today is our third session of American English Live Teacher Development Series 7. We have an exciting lineup of topics remaining related to curriculum and course design and learning through professional networks and communities of practice. Which sessions are you most excited about? Share your responses in the chat. We hope you will be able to use the practical ideas we share throughout the series in your classrooms. So here's what to expect today. Each session is about 60 minutes long and is often related to an American English eTeacher massive open online course or a Teacher's Corner theme on the American English website. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address all of your great questions, experiences, background knowledge, and contexts. When our session comes to a close in about an hour, you'll have an opportunity to receive a digital badge for your participation. Today, we have some instructions to kind of inform everybody of how to share those and how to store them. So be sure to stay tuned for that a little bit for a couple of minutes after today's session. But at the end of the session, we'll share a link in the comments and at the top of the post. Click on that link and answer 2 out of 3 multiple choice questions correctly to be able to be eligible for your digital badge. Once you've successfully passed the quiz, you should expect to receive your digital badge via email within about a week. And finally, before we begin, we invite you to register for our free self-paced massive open online course, or MOOC, using educational technology in the English language classroom. With support from our global education partners, this MOOC will prepare you, our wonderful audience of TESOL professionals, to integrate language learning tools into your English language teaching. Participants will become aware of free technological tools, learn how to use these tools for language learning and teaching, and evaluate the appropriateness of technology tools for your specific contexts. This course is offered from opened up a couple of days ago through May 4th, 2020. You may log in and complete coursework at any time during these 12 weeks, but just as an FYI, it's designed to be about a 5-week course. So you need to have it all finished by May 4th in order to pass and receive your digital badge. Visit the link here for more details about how to join. And now for today's session, brain-based strategies and critical thinking to maximize vocabulary acquisition. This interactive webinar will focus on maximizing vocabulary acquisition for English learners with a focus on easy-to-implement classroom strategies and activities based on brain-based learning and critical thinking. In this session, you will explore how to assess students' knowledge of vocabulary and to determine what words to teach. You'll discuss how the brain learns and stores words, And you'll share and demonstrate instructional strategies, including graphic organizers, word study, word sorts, and games. And now I'm happy to introduce our presenter, Anne Walker. Anne has over 30 years of teaching experience in English language teaching. She's conducted numerous teacher workshops in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and is currently a professor at Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. She has a master's degree in TESOL from Boston University and a PhD in literacy education from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She loves languages and collaborating with teachers around the world. So welcome, Anne. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Kate, and I'm happy to be here too, and thank you everyone out there listening. So as Kate was saying, we're going to talk about brain-based strategies and critical thinking. And don't worry if you don't know what that is right now, we're going to take it step by step and explain. So I am a word nerd. And a nerd is someone who loves to study and learn. And I love learning about how words work, the history of words. I love playing word games with my family. And I love teaching vocabulary in ways that makes it fun and exciting for my students too. And so my hope is by the end of the day that I'll have shown you some new ways to teach vocabulary that's fun and excited to help you become word nerds and help your students become word nerds too. So our focus today, again, repeating a little what Kate said, we're going to talk about first, how do you select vocabulary words to teach? Because there's so many words out there that your students don't know. And then once you've selected those, how can you teach those in ways that students are really going to understand and learn them? And that would be brain-based vocabulary. So we'll start out first talking about what does it mean to be brain-based learning. And then we'll talk about critical thinking and what that is and how you can use that in teaching vocabulary. And I really encourage all of you to participate. We're going to be asking you lots of questions and to do lots of different things with words today. So our first thing we're going to talk about is vocabulary selection. Usually as English teachers, we teach way too many words. If your chapter has 20 vocabulary words and you do a chapter a week, your students can memorize those words and they can tell you what they mean on a test. But how many words will they remember in a month? Chances are they're only going to remember 5. So one of our challenges as English teachers is figuring out what are the best words to teach. And we're going to talk about some strategies for how to do that. But you really only want to choose 5 to 8 vocabulary words to teach at a time. So 5 to 8 words a week. Okay, so how do we do this? We do this in 2 ways. One is a system, it's called the 3-tier system to select words. And we'll talk about this and do some examples. And another important thing is assessing your students' word knowledge. What words do they already know? If they already know the words, you're not going to spend time teaching it. And if you do both those things, it'll really help you narrow down those 5 to 8 words that you're going to focus on and teach. So the first strategy is called the 3-tier strategy. And this was developed by Isabel Beck and Nancy McKeon, who are 2 English teachers. And they developed the 3-tier system, or 3 levels. Tier 1 are common words that your beginning students should know. Good, bad, excellent, okay? Tier 2 words are words that are commonly used in English that your students will see when they, read a magazine or they read a book or they're listening to the news. Tier 3 words are words that students rarely need to know anymore. They're very specific words, very advanced words, maybe very specialized words that you might need to know, like if you're going to be a doctor. So our focus in teaching really should be on tier 2 words. Now, if you're teaching very beginning students, you'll focus on tier 1. If you have a mixed ability class, you might teach some tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And I always throw in some tier 3 words if I have some students who really need a challenge, okay? But for example, sterling, people used to say 100 years ago, oh, you did a sterling job. Well, No one ever says that anymore. You don't need to know that. So you wouldn't want to spend a lot of time teaching what that means.
Hmm.
Okay, so are we ready to try some examples?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So today, our theme are going to be words that relate to smell. Now, tier 1, our basic level, is the word smell. Okay, the verb, the noun. I am going to assume that all of you know that. So we're not going to spend time teaching smell. Tier 2 words are, again, more advanced, and odor, fragrance, fragrant, aroma, aromatic, which is an adjective, to sniff and sniff. They all are related to smell, but they're more advanced, they're more specific, but they're still very commonly used in English. Now, a tier 3 word would be pungent. And I am throwing this in there here today as a challenge word. Some of you might know it, but I have a feeling a lot of you don't. So what I'm going to do next is I want you to self-assess. How well do you know these words? And so what I want you to do is, if I was teaching in a class, I would write the words on a board or on a piece of paper, and I would ask my students to think about the word and if they've ever seen it before. And if they know it well, they have to give me a definition. So I could do this very quickly with a large class, and I could say, raise your hand if you've never seen or heard the word before. If lots of students raise their hands, I know it's a good word to teach. I could say, raise your hands if you've heard or seen it, but you don't know exactly what it means. And then I'd say, raise your hand if you know the word well and tell me what it means. So if lots of hands go up, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time teaching that because I know most of my students know it. So using the tier 3-tier system and then assessing words is how I pick those 5 to 8 words that I really want to spend a lot of time teaching. So now it's your turn. I'm going to show you a vocabulary rating scale. So this would be similar to, you can ask your students to raise their hands, or you can do this on a piece of paper. And so the words are listed and the students self-assess, so they just say, okay, do I know this word? Do I know it well? Check if I know it well. So smell. Odor, well, I've heard it, but I don't really know exactly what it means. So I check. Now it's your turn, and I want you to think about the word sniff and the word pungent. Decide you don't know it, never seen it. You've seen it or heard it, but not sure. Or you know it well. And if you know it well, you have to give a definition. So why don't you type, Kate, one of your answers for either sniff or pungent?
Yeah, let's hear from you, everybody. What do you think? So this is a really great student self-assessment, and we're getting lots of comments about how people really like this. So don't forget that you can find these materials on the Ning if you want to afterwards. So what do you think, everybody? Sniff and pungent. Let us know if you know that word well. And if you have, please give us a definition. If you've seen it or heard it, but you're not quite sure what it means, or if you 0% know the word at all. Let's see, Santi says, I've never seen pungent. Sniff, Dillafru says she knows it well, but pungent, she doesn't know it. A lot of people saying, I don't know that word pungent. And pungent is new for me, from Miriam, and also from M. Teresa. Let's see, Sadar says sniff means smelling something from the nose. Sniff is to inhale through the nose, from De La Fruce. And a few people saying they don't know either word. They haven't heard either word before. And it looks like we might have a nice definition from Yoshiro of pungent, which is a sharp penetrating smell. So a varied range from our audience, which is great. So thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge rating for each of those words.
So, right, so pungent, you've never heard it because it's a tier 3 word. We don't use it in English that much. And sniff, I can tell a lot of you have an idea what it means. It is something you do with your nose, but it has a very specific definition. And so we'll get to that in a minute. And Yoshiro's definition of pungent sounds like a dictionary definition.
Good job,
Very
Yoshiro.
specific. Penetrating is a hard word in English. Okay. So once we've narrowed down our 5 to 8 words, it's time to introduce them to our students. And so we're going to do this. We are going, oh, sorry, missed the question. Okay, so what strategies would you use when introducing, okay, never mind. What strategies would you use when introducing vocabulary?
Yeah, so we just got this great rating scale that all of you guys can use for a new vocabulary, or maybe you're already using it in your classrooms. What other strategies do you use when you introduce vocabulary to kind of understand students' understanding of a word or how much they know about a certain word? What do you do to kind of assess or maybe to start stimulating that background knowledge for your students? Let's see, what do you think, everybody? Let's see, I have students brainstorm from one participant, great. So maybe they brainstorm everything they know about a certain topic. Karen says drawing mind maps, asking the students what the meaning is, just asking, that's great. Danny Ciel says using a song. Playing a game from Miriam. And Waleed says he writes the new words on the board and writes maybe sentences for a context. And Anna says that she uses visual aids. So these are all great strategies for introducing vocabulary. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, everybody.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, those are all great ideas. So when you introduce words, there are 3 things that you want to do. You want to give the word. Well, I think we need to go back in the slides. Back, sorry. Can we go back? Okay, sorry, I think we're, okay, never mind, sorry, I'm wrong. Okay, let's go forward. It's the wrong page. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused. Okay, so brain-based strategies. When we use brain-based strategies, the brain is really important. It's where we store our words. If I said the word truck, you'd probably see a picture of your truck, and you might be looking your eyes up at the ceiling because that you're looking up at your brain. So when we teach vocabulary, we want to do it in ways that help those words get into our brain and stick in our brain for the long term. So how do we do that? Our brain remembers words by how they're connected with other words. And so we need to help students make those connections with other words, with images, with information. So, you know, a lot of you were saying when you introduce words, you give a picture or you use a sentence. A song is a way we make connections, and the brain really remembers songs. So for example, like if I say, what is it, chicken? You're probably saying it's a bird, I eat it, it's an egg, because those are the connections that your brain has made. If I say, what's a kitchen? You're gonna say, it's a room, I cook it. And those are the connections that you've made. So that's what we want to do when we introduce words and have our students practice and review words. We want them to make those connections, because the more connections you have, the more you're going to understand the word and the more it's really going to stick in the brain. Okay, so now let's move on to introducing vocabulary. Sorry. So when you introduce a word, okay, you should do 3 things. And I know many of you said these things. One is a student-friendly definition. A dictionary definition is often too complicated for the students. So for example, Yoshiro said a sharp penetrating object. That's great, that's right, but what if your students don't know penetrating? So you want really a student-friendly definition. You want a rich context, so a sentence where they will understand it. and it's very clear what it means. And then you want a picture or a visual image, again, to help make those connections. And by using all three of these things together, your students can really start processing, what is this word? What does it mean? Okay.
Wonderful.
So
where's a place where you look for student-friendly definitions, or how do you generate those?
I look for definitions in student dictionaries.
Mhm.
I ask my students, I think my students, your students are the best source for what they understand.
Definitely. Yeah, good point. Thanks.
So let's look at our vocabulary words. So these are our 5 words for today: odor, fragrance, and fragrant, so the noun and the adjective, aroma, and pungent, and sniff. So I've given you a very friendly student definition. And if you read the definitions, you'll see how these words are different from each other. So in odor, it's a smell, but it's a bad smell. Whereas fragrance, it's a smell, but it's a beautiful, sweet smell. And pungent is a smell, but it's a spicy smell. And sniff, right? Sniff means to smell, but it's a very short smell. Okay, so again, when you give the definitions, you can show how these words are different from each other. And then they're
sorry, I was just gonna say that's such a beautiful chart. And again, everybody, don't forget that these can be found on the Ning, and you can use something similar or make a copy and give this to your students in a very similar lesson, or you can even copy this type of chart on the board to use in your classroom too.
Right, and a very, very simple sentence, a very clear picture, and you don't have to use pictures from the internet. You can draw pictures. I have students draw pictures, okay? But something, again, that's going to very clearly help your students make connections with the word and connect them with each other words and see how they're different from the words. Okay, any questions?
Let's see, any questions, anyone so far about these wonderful strategies? We are seeing lots of people mention how much they're excited about these strategies. And Edison says he's used something similar with his students in college, so that's great. Yeah, so just a lot of great comments so far.
And you can use these at any level. You just make them simpler for younger students, more advanced for older students.
Definitely.
Okay. So we're going to move on to critical thinking skills. So we've talked about how the brain makes connections with words. We also want our students to really think deeply about what words mean. And this chart is Bloom's taxonomy. It was created by Benjamin Bloom, who was an educational psychologist. And he created this back in 1956. And it shows the different levels of thinking. So the easiest thing is remembering. We don't have to think a lot to remember. It's in our brain or it's not. Understanding is the next level, and then applying. So applying would be using vocabulary words in a sentence or in speech. But we want students to actually do more than remember and understand words. We want them to really analyze words and to evaluate words. What do they really mean? How, what are their connections to other words? How are they different from other words? What's the best word to use in this situation? And so when you talk about analyzing, evaluating, and creating, you're talking about critical thinking skills where the brain really has to think. And if you think about, there's new English words all the time. We talked about texting, on your phone. That's a new English word. It was created. So analyzing, evaluating, creating, that's what we want our students to do and what we want them to do when we're teaching vocabulary. So we're going to practice some strategies that really make the brain think and use critical thinking skills. So brain-based strategies, we're going to focus on 6 strategies today. that make the brain work really hard and really help students learn those words and build those connections. So one is called the Frayer Model. Similar to that is a word map, and this would be a mind map. Some people call it a concept map. We're going to do an activity called selecting the best word, another activity called degrees of meaning, and then we'll get into a word analysis, and finally we're going to end with a game of charades.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
Okay, so let's move on to the Frayer Model. The Frayer Model is a graphic organizer. It's a chart. And what it does is students have to make connections with words. You can use this on a piece of paper. Students can make their own on an index card. And this is something that the students do. So the first time I would do this, I would explain it to the students, model it, do some with them. But then I turn it over to the students and I say, okay, here's your words, make your Frayer models. And I want my students to work together because they can really share ideas. So the vocabulary word goes in the center. And then you want your students to write a definition in their own words, so that student-friendly word. You want them to remember it in a way they understand. You want them to write some facts or characteristics about the word to really show, they can explain what it is. And then you want them to write some examples and some non-examples. If they can write non-examples, it really shows they know what it is and what it isn't, that compare, contrast. And that is critical thinking. And what I do when I'm done is I have my students share the cards with other students and they talk about them. Because the more students talk about words together, the more they help each other understand at their own level. So let's try it. So here is an example. Fragrance is in the middle. And a definition, something that has a beautiful smell. Facts, so parts of speech, it's an adjective. And then fragrance, important if you're going to teach, fragrant would be the noun. Made a mistake
I
there.
think we have a typo on this slide. Yeah, I think
Yes.
the word in the middle should be fragrant with a T.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I like my students, they can use their first language. So they could put a translation if that's going to help them understand and remember it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then examples and non-examples. So something that are fragrant or that have a strong fragrance, flowers, perfume. But dirty socks. No, dirty socks. You would never say dirty socks are fragrant. Or bad breath is fragrant.
Nope.
So those examples really help students understand what the word is and isn't and make connections.
Yeah. Edison says maybe you could use this to do sort of a word for the day. Like this could be a nice something you do at the beginning of class or something. That's a great idea.
Right. And if I was doing this like word of the day, I would put this up on the wall then, so that every day students can look on the wall and see all the words from all the different days.
Great.
So we're going to move on to a word map, which is very similar. And it's like a mind map, a concept map, in which students write the vocabulary word again in the center, and you can do this in pairs, small groups, and they brainstorm. What other words do they know, like smell? What are the connections between the words? And that you can draw pictures, you could use, native language translations, but the idea is to visually show those connections. So I did this and I wrote smell, and you do this on a piece of paper on the board, it's very easy. And I broke it up into good smells and bad smells. And I put pungent by itself because pungent can be a good or a bad smell. It depends on the person. And so those are the kind of conversations you can have. I drew a flower that's supposed to be a nose. So again, word maps are very easy for your students to use. You can put them up on the walls so students can look up at them and remember, use them to study and review.
Yeah, sounds good. We have some nice questions and comments coming in. Like Edison says, maybe you could use an antonym in this type of activity as well. And then a couple of comments about the Frayer model, if we could go back to that. So like Venerocha is asking, what are non-examples and what's the role of that? And Maj similarly says that she had never heard of non-examples, so that was great. But maybe what do you mean by non-examples, Anne, and what's the role of that?
Okay, so it's similar to antonyms or the opposite. And you could do that. There's different ways you can do this. You could do this with antonyms, but if you give a non-example, it's clearly you know what it is not.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and it's applying sort of that critical thinking skill too of comparing and contrasting and showing what it is not, or showing its opposite, sort of.
Right. And I would say the exact same thing. So if your non-example should be something that clearly shows that it's not it. So dirty socks would be an odor, a bad smell. You would never say dirty socks are fragrant.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your questions, everybody. Keep them coming.
And you can find lots of different graphic organizers on the internet. There are lots that have synonyms, antonyms. You can look up a word concept map, for example, and you make it so it works for you and your students.
Great. And one other question from Miriam. Do students use dictionaries when they do these activities?
They can. I like my students to work on it first. What do they know together? And then I can help them as a teacher. But dictionaries, again, if it's a student-friendly dictionary, that's good, or a picture dictionary. But sometimes the dictionaries are just too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But let students start first working together. What do they already know?
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Any questions or how you might use this word in your classroom?
Yeah, everyone, how would you use these ideas in your classroom? How might you adapt them? We already heard some great ideas for how you might adapt them, like by adding, antonyms or synonyms. Maybe some teachers would like to have their students use a dictionary, some would not. What other ideas do you have that you think would be good adaptations for your classroom? Let's see. One person asked about, let's see, do they have to have a copy of these types of materials, or can you put them on the board? And no, you can totally put them on the board and have students copy in their notebooks or something like that. Pat is saying these are nice activities so that students can use the word in appropriate contexts and situations. That's great. Santi says we could use this before reading comprehension. That's a great idea. And Juan Carlos says maybe we could have students Google it or search for words online to sort of make it more appealing, and they might be interested in using technology as part of this as well. So great ideas, everybody. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, so let's move on to selecting the best word. So in this activity, you want students to evaluate and analyze the vocabulary words and then the picture to really think, what is the best word to use? So which word would you use to describe the smell of this image? And you can type your answers into Kate.
Ooh, what do you think, everybody? This looks like a very delicious loaf of bread. Which word would you use from this vocabulary word list to describe this image? What do you think? Would you use fragrant, pungent, has a good aroma, has an odor, or sniff? What would you say? Anna says 1 or 3. Yoshiro says aroma. What do you think, everybody? Which of these words would you use to describe this lovely image? And I wonder if it's making anyone hungry like it is me. I'm seeing lots of people say aroma. Ambi, Pat, Sardar. Are they correct, Anne?
They are, very good, right. Usually think breads, they have an aroma. Coffee, it has a really good smell. But you wouldn't say fragrant. Fragrant is more a beautiful or flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so again, when we get into these words, they have very specific definitions. And it's important that students know the specific definition so that they use it correctly. Okay, let's try another one. Now in this one, I have a sentence and you have to fill in the blank. So again, which word would fit best in this sentence?
Yeah, great question. Soaps and shampoos often have a strong what? From our vocabulary list here, what would you do? Which word would you choose to fill in the blank here? Fragrance, pungent, aroma, odor, or sniff. Soaps and shampoos often have a strong, what do you think? Let's see, Vanessa says fragrance, Ambi says fragrance, Zoe, Anna, Camelia, Mohammed, a lot of people. I think, are they correct, Ann?
They are. I think we made this too easy.
We have a lot of very excellent participants. So yes, I do think we made it a little too easy.
Right. So soaps and shampoos often smell like flowers or perfume. If soaps and shampoos had a strong odor, we wouldn't use them because that would be bad.
That wouldn't be good. Yeah.
Right. So what level of critical thinking did you use to figure out the best words?
Yeah, great question. What do you think, everybody? We took a look earlier at this Bloom's taxonomy. What do you think in terms of remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, or creating? Which of those skills did we use as we were choosing our word for that image of the bread or for the image or for the sentence about soaps? Let's see, Dillafru says analyzing. Let's see. What else? Evaluating from Marisol. Dillafru, yeah, analyzing, applying from Anna. Evaluating from Olga. Yeah, which level of critical thinking do you think students would be using, or did you just use to select the best word? So yeah, I think I'm seeing a lot of analyzing, evaluating, and applying. What do you think, Ann?
Right. So definitely you remembered what the word meant, and you had to understand it to get the right answer, and you had to apply it. You had to actually use the word. But you analyzed and evaluated. You had to think about how are the 5 words different from each other. You had to think about the bread and which was the best one. So you were actually evaluating. So definitely a lot of critical thinking, a lot of brain work going on.
Great.
So we're going to move on to another activity. We're going to make your brain work a little harder this time.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is called Degrees of Meaning. And you have to evaluate the meaning of each word and how it differs from the other words. So we're going to make, this is going to be a little harder in that how I would do this, I'd have students in small groups of 3 to 4, and then I'd give them a card, you know, like this with words on them, or students can cut them out from a list. Together, the students would discuss what they think the words mean. No dictionaries. Practicing after they've already been introduced. And then I would tell the students they have to put them in order based on a degree of meaning. Okay, so this time it's not just picking out the right one, but putting them in order.
Sounds good.
Okay, so here we go, everybody. We have 5 words here. These are all temperature words. Warm, tepid, scalding, freezing, and chilly. These are all tier 2 words, common English words that you hear in the weather report or when you're cooking. So what I want you to do is put them in order from the coldest to the hottest. If you're in a group, work together. If not, then try it on your own. And you can type, Kate, the answers in order.
Yes, let us know which one is the coldest and which one is the hottest. And please write all the words in one post, not individually, so that we make sure we can see what your response is. So which of these is coldest all the way to hottest? How would you put these in order? We're seeing some nice answers come in. I'm going to keep it a secret for just a couple minutes to make sure people have time to respond. What do you think, everybody? From coldest to hottest. Let's see. Yep, I think we are getting some really great and correct answers here. Let's see. Anna says freezing, chilly, tepid, warm, and scalding. And to be honest, Anne, a lot of people are saying the same response. Is that correct?
That is, we made it too easy for this group. Right. But if you notice, if something is scalding, it's more than hot. Or if something is tepid, it's not cold, it's not warm. So they're very, very specific meanings. And that's what you want your students to do if they're going to use them correctly or understand them correctly in English. So it's definitely a lot of analyzing and evaluating going on here. So how do you think you could use something like this in your own teaching?
Yeah, great job, everybody, on those responses. What else could you do with this type of activity, or how might you adapt it? Maybe what other types of vocabulary words could you use this activity for? What other themes or topics? Or what other ways would you make it in a different way, interactive, or that sort of thing? What do you think, everybody? How would you adapt this? So we might be able to use word cards, as Anne was showing us. Maybe you can use a different topic that has different degrees. For example, maybe emotions or something like that, from sad to happy, or negative to positive emotions. Modal verbs from Christian, that's a great idea. So maybe, especially with probability for modal verbs, that's a great idea. Degrees of adjectives, great. Timeline, very nice, Yana. To teach adjectives or gradable adjectives from Anna, very nice. Steph said this would be very useful with frequency adverbs, which is a great point and something a lot of us have to teach, that never to always situation. And maybe different kinds of food or something like that. So very good, everybody. Thanks so much for sharing your wonderful responses.
Right, good answers. You can use this for a number of things, bigger to smaller. But again, it really gets students to think about the degrees of meaning and how the words, what they specifically mean and how they differ from other words, and making those brain connections. Okay, so let's turn to another activity, word analysis. So word analysis, really thinking and breaking words apart, figuring them out, the parts of words, or analyzing a sentence, really getting the brain to think about that. So I like to say that if you give a child a definition, they'll know one word. But if you teach them to analyze words, then they're going to know thousands more. And I'm sure that all of you do this as English teachers. When you're reading, you don't look up every word that you don't know. You try and figure it out. You use the context. You look at the word. Are there parts of that word that you know? And that's really what we want our English students to do, is to really analyze the words. So
yeah, I think a lot of people saying how this is a very nice reminder, maybe even a quote that we could remind ourselves of, put this up somewhere next to your desk or something like that. Because yeah, if we're giving our students tools to analyze and think critically about vocabulary, they're going to be able to explore and learn a lot on their own, not just us telling them apple with a photo and that's it. So this is great. Thanks so much for sharing this.
Yeah, so if we talk about, again, getting into parts of speech, and I know some of you are probably going to know this because you were talking about gradable adjectives, but prefixes, suffixes, root words, compound words, this is how the English language works and how we build words. And so it's really important to teach your students prefixes, suffixes, compound words, even beginners, suffixes, with the S is the plural. But, for my advanced students, I make them memorize lists of prefixes and suffixes so that when they are reading on their own, they can figure out words on their own. And again, helping students make those connections. So, misspell, helping students understand it means wrong, spell. If you see it in one word, it looks like maybe it's big. Oh, I don't know that word. But if you break it up, look at the parts, a lot of times you can figure it out and get a good idea of what it means. The same thing with toothbrush. It looks long, but if you break it up and think about it, okay, chances are your students can even get a close idea of what it means. So let's try an example. Well, let's look at a graphic organizer actually first. So this is very similar to the Frayer model. You could do this with a word map, but you have the root word, so frack or frag. What does that mean? Well, it means to break. And so if you think, and you can have your students brainstorm all the words they know that start with frack or frag, a fraction, a fragment, fragile. We don't usually think of those, but if we know what frack or frag means, we have a much better idea. And if we read it in the whole sentence, we can figure out. Again, a picture, a symbol, a sentence, a meaningful sentence. You don't want to just say, it was fragile. That doesn't mean anything. But if you're talking about, being careful in a vase, that's a meaningful sentence that shows really what fragile means. So again, your students can, do this with different things to make them make those connections and remember and connect to lots of other different words.
Great.
So let's try an activity. Let's try a word analysis activity. So again, and you probably have your students do something like this, but I do it all the time. If we're talking or reading and I see a word that has a prefix in it or a suffix, I stop, I'll write the word on the board, have them talk about what parts what words do you know that start with the same prefix or have the same suffix, because I want to get them in that habit of always analyzing words. So again, write the word on the board, ask the students if they can see the parts they know, ask what the words mean, ask them to use it in a meaningful sentence, ask them what other words do you know that have these parts. And as always, I always do an example with the class first, lots of practice with them. But once they get really good, I say, okay, analyze the word. So let's try it. So an example, misplace. So we already talked about misspell, so you already know miss is wrong. Place is a location, and so a meaningful sentence, I misplaced my car keys and couldn't drive my car. Something that I do too often. And that would be an example. Lose would be a tier 1 word, misplaced is a tier 2 word. So your turn. Unbreakable is probably going to be easy. Analyze the word. What does it mean? And I think to make it hard, I want you all to do number 3. I want you to use it in a meaningful sentence that really shows what it means. And so you can type your answers to Kate.
All right, and as Anne pointed out this morning in our first session, do not say it is unbreakable, okay? Give us sort of an example and a little bit longer sentence so that we can see the context, maybe a reason why or something like that. So more than 3 words if you can. Let's give us a meaningful sentence with the word unbreakable. I'm working on my master's degree with unbreakable determination. Good job, Yoshiro. Keep it up. We're sure you're going to be able to achieve that excellent goal. Wonderful. Maj says unbreakable means it can't be broken. Great. And a lot of people are writing about that with analyzing the word. Good. Remember, give us a little bit of context, more than just a few words. Maybe try to expand it to several words. Maybe give a reason or show an example in the sentence. Let's see. The rules from our school are unbreakable by M. Teresa. Well, I'm sure students that break them, but they have consequences. My basketball defense is unbreakable. Uh-oh, we do not want to play against you, Robert. A lot of people, my spirit is unbreakable. Very nice, Zoe. Great. I hope in the future that there will be more unbreakable materials so our cars don't get so damaged. Nice, Anna. Very good.
Right.
Excellent, everybody. Thanks for sharing your ideas.
And by all those sentences, I can tell that you really understand the word. And so one thing you really have to do is work with your students so that they understand what a meaningful sentence is. Because I know when I teach, students will write, "It is unbreakable." And no, okay, show me what the word means by your sentence. So good sentences, everybody. So any questions about that? Okay.
I don't see any right now, but I will let you know as they come in.
Okay. So word searches, that would be when you have jumbled letters and students have to find the word, and crossword puzzles. I see a lot of teachers using this for vocabulary practice, and I want you to think, what level of thinking do crossword puzzles, for example, require of students? Is it critical thinking?
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on this. Do word searches or crossword puzzles require critical thinking about vocabulary? Let us know what you think, and also give us a little reason why or why not. What are your ideas about word searches or crossword puzzles? So here on the slide, we have an image of a crossword puzzle. And then as Anne explained, word search is more where there are a bunch of letters and words in a box and you have to find the word and circle it. Dilafru says she thinks this is more level of remembering. Very good. Yoshira says crosswords do provide an opportunity to think logically and creatively. Santi says she uses this for phonics. Another participant says you can analyze the structure of words with these. And a few other people are saying that it provides opportunities to analyze. So what do you think, Anne?
You know, I think it depends on the crossword puzzle. A lot of times it's simply remembering. It's the word and the definition. So it's a good practice and students like that, but usually it doesn't have much analysis and evaluation.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, but students do like this. And so as a way to help them, you know, maybe a review, it's a good review. But to help them really learn the meaning of the word or to connect it to other words, it's probably not the best.
Great, yeah, sometimes it might be helpful, like Anna's sharing how you do have to understand the definition and then evaluate the number of spaces. So there is definitely some merit in this type of activity, but for those really higher level critical thinking skills, maybe more things related to the other activities that we have done today.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's try a game. I mean, and games are fun. Students like games. They like word games. So let's try one that uses critical thinking, and we're going to play charades. And this is where you act out the words. So how this works is you give a student a vocabulary word, so you can give them and they come up in front of the class. You give them a word. And I always make sure the student knows what the word is. And then the student acts the words out in front of the class without talking. They can't use any words. And the other students guess what the word is. So let's try this.
Okay.
So the first time I will act out a word, and I want you to watch and tell me what word it is from our list of vocabulary words.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Did everybody see that? She kind of held her coffee cup up and it didn't look like she was super happy about that. So out of our list of vocabulary words that we've been working with today, which word do you think she's acting out? Maybe do it one more time, Anne. Just in case somebody might have missed it. What do you think? I'm seeing some responses. It looks like sniff, maybe.
Yes.
And another person says odor. So I think we have a lot of people saying sniff and odor. Which one's correct, Anne?
Well, it's my fault. I was trying to say sniff. So
Oh,
that very short smell.
Oh, yes. Okay, got it.
So let's turn it over to all of you. If you were doing the word odor, what would you do to show an odor? How would you act it out?
Yeah, let us know in the comments or the chat. What would you do if you were acting out the word odor? What would you do? What sort of actions would you have, or expressions on your face, or things that you would do to try to express the word odor? What do you think, everybody? So let's see. Anna says, I would probably wave my hand in front of my nose like this. Ooh. What else? What other things might you do? Aruj says he would try to show that something had a bad smell. Very nice. What other things might you do to express the word odor in your actions? Okay, maybe you could put your hand over your nose like this, or maybe you could give like a face like this, or maybe smell something and have a bad look on your face. So very good. A wrinkled nose, very good. All right, thanks for your responses, everybody.
So charades are really fun. They're easy to do. You don't need anything to do it other than students. If you have a few minutes at the end of class, you can easily play a game of charades. And it's a great way to really practice and review those games, like right before a test.
Nice.
Lower the anxiety. So,
definitely.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot now. We've practiced 6 different strategies. And what's really important is you introduce the words, but practicing and reviewing. Research shows that students have to see a word, read a word, say or write it 20 times before it stays in their brain permanently. So short-term memory, they memorize it for the test, they forget it. But if you keep on practicing and reviewing, then it stays in long-term memory. And so as a teacher, you need to make sure that students have opportunities to hear the word, they read the word in different contexts, that they can say the word different times in sentences, and that they can actually write the word in meaningful sentences. So again, you need to lots and lots of practice and review. And in ways that use brain-based strategies, critical thinking, and that are fun and engaging. So we're near the end today. Let's summarize. Again, 5 to 8 words at a time. Because if you're really going to introduce the words, practice and review them, 5 to 8 words takes time. Use brain-based strategies, help your students make those connections between words, and so that they understand very clearly what a word means and can use it correctly in context. Have them use their brains, okay? Make your students do the work, make them do the thinking. Introduce, practice, and review, and then make it fun. And so hopefully, by doing all this, your students are going to learn vocabulary words, but they're going to become word nerds. They're going to learn to love the English language. Hopefully, as much as you do as English teachers. So
Definitely.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're getting a lot of great comments in our chat box today about things like thanks for the great activities. Let's see, a lot of people saying thank you and that they're going to be using these strategies in the future. So really so much thanks to you, Anne, for this wonderful presentation.
And thank you, Kate, and thank all of you for joining us today.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, as Anne said, we always want to thank you, our wonderful audience, for your great and lively participation in all of our activities. And we're so happy to see that maybe you can use these ideas and strategies in your classrooms. And as a reminder, you can find all of these resources on AmericanEnglishWebinars.com. And if you have any questions about our programs, you can email us at the email listed here. And we have lots of other ways for you to stay connected to our programming here on this slide. So thank you.